This video is sponsored by Amino Apps. Your interests times infinity. Hello again, everyone. This is Dr.Kendo, and I'm back with another Scribblenauts Unlimited object editor commentary. Today, we'll be creating the updated Chapter 1 look of Dead Boris in the game Bendy and the Ink Machine, but we'll also be making Boris as he appears in Chapter 2 for the game as well. But before we get to that, please allow me to just take a quick minute to talk about the Bendy and the Ink Machine Amino app, which you'll want to be downloading after seeing this video. So, you guys are here watching me for a Bendy and the Ink Machine video. Well, this is going to be a great app for you then, because they've opened up the newly created Bendy and the Ink Machine Amino community, and I'm gonna join in on the fun right now. Let's do this. After installing the app, you can enjoy a myriad of great information, pictures, fan art, stories, and much more by looking through all of the posts in this Bendy and the Ink Machine Amino community. Why not try your hand at one of the quizzes, if you either want to test your knowledge or have some fun with that? And so since we're in the Bendy and the Ink Machine community right now, I'm going to click on this best quizzes that are handpicked by the leaders of the community and all the curators here. And so let's go ahead and check out. This says it's going to be a pretty difficult quiz, I think, so I may not actually do super well. But here we go. Check this out with this Bendy and the Ink Machine stuff. How many times does Bendy's cardboard cutout jump scare the player in Chapter 1? I don't know! I don't know! I don't know. He did 3? No, it's not. Okay, it's 2. But you see what I mean. Join in on a public chat with others who share your same interest in Bendy and the Ink Machine, or you can also start a one-on-one chat with another user. There's also polls you can create or vote on, challenges you can enter, and some other really fun things. And hey, you can also follow the people that you like if there's anybody you want to see more from, like me maybe. So download this Bendy and the Ink Machine Amino today using the links in the description, and you can also find my username there as well. And with that, thanks to Amino, let's get on with the creation. Alright, so we're here in Scribblenauts Unlimited. We're gonna go ahead and start off with a plumber as the source object. For anybody who is wondering, the object editor here that we're using is only available on the Wii U and PC versions of this game. And as I mentioned before, we're gonna be creating Boris, but the kind of updated Chapter 1 of Dead Boris. And then this here is gonna be Chapter 2's kind of main design, since we've gotten a full body image look at Boris at the end of Chapter 2. Spoiler, I guess, if you haven't seen it by this point, but you probably should have, especially if you've come to this video. I bet you have. So we've got an oil vent right now. I painted it all the way black, and so that's like the blackest of black that it can be. We got a corned beef coming up next, and these are basically for black spots between all of the overalls and stuff like that for Boris's clothing. Looking good so far. And so we've just gotten started though, and so I'm gonna tilt that just a little bit. But then we've got an octopus that I'm gonna type in next, and we're gonna go with one of the tentacle pieces. It's the one that's on the left side that has just a slight bend to it at the very end of it, and this is going to be for the straps on the overalls here, so put it on both sides. That means you're going to need 2 of them. I did put a little bit of a texture pattern. I think it was on the 3rd page, the kind of wavy white and gray texture, and then over that we did this sepia tone that's really light. I've got a minus sign, and I guess the sepia tone I should mention is, you know, in Bendy and the Ink Machine, that's often kind of the color style of the game, but I'm doing it a lot lighter as if to make it just a little bit more realistic. Here we've got a kiwi. Of course, you want to pick the kiwi fruit, as you could probably see, because kiwi also will yield the choice of a bird as well. So pick the fruit. We're going to put that underneath the overalls, straps, and stuff here at the bottom, and next to the minus sign that we did just place. I'll go with Flux next, and Flux is one of Maxwell's many brothers. If you know this game, he's got a ton of brothers, and here we're just using Flux's back leg for both of the legs of Boris. That's not going to get his exact shoes and everything, so we will modify that with a chicken nugget. We're going to put that down at the bottom where his feet are supposed to be, and so that will be the kind of addition to Boris's shoes. You can see here I took one of the Flux legs out so I could see what I'm doing. Since the painting all the way black, you know, it does make it hard to see when you have both of the shoes and both of the legs right next to each other like that, the Flux legs. I did use that same octopus tentacle piece that we used for the overall straps. Also going to be for his arm. You know, he's got very skinny arms, and so we've got the first arm right here is the front arm. It's basically Boris's right arm, but it's to our left. We also used a glove. A glove is going to be for the hands. You can see Boris, well, I should say, normally in Scribblenauts Unlimited, I don't use like glove and hand just to be the hands of something. I often try to think of something that's more outside the box, a different kind of stamp to do that, which is fine either way. You can design however you want to, and no one should make fun of anybody's design for those kinds of purposes. But in this case, I actually thought that using glove like that, it does normally look kind of stiff, very rigid posture. But I thought that that was actually kind of accurate because Boris's hands and stuff, they do kind of look in that stiff position. I thought it was just accurate to the design. We put down one of the 29-page library arm shapes for the neck. You could use anything. A letter I is also something you could use. Just paint it all the way black and put it on the torso, all the way behind. And then the last kind of detail there for the body was patch. If you type in patch, we can put that for the little patches or squares there on the overalls where his knees are. And here you can see that I've named this Boris 2 head. We've made just some very slight changes, but this is basically the Boris design from an episode that I did back in the days. That was episode 220. It was when we created Boris before there was a real kind of good look at Boris. You know, I don't even think we had a full body design of Boris that wasn't dead on the rack. This was all the way back when chapter 1 was made and kind of newly released, I guess. But again, the Boris that was dead on the table was kind of the only full image that we had. Otherwise, we just had posters, and so I sort of had to do some guessing and whatnot. But please look back to that episode to see the design for Boris's head there. For most of those stamps, except for we did make an oil vent be the nose, so a slight change up in there. I made the eyes a little bit bigger as well. So whenever you're creating the head and the body separately in this game, you do that because the game does actually have a stamp limit, meaning you can't just put infinite amount of stamps and stuff to create your character. There is a limit. You script the head under the properties editor to be worn on the face like glasses. You saw that sort of put the Boris head where it needs to be, but it was a little bit low. It was kind of like the shoulders were meeting the head right there. Couldn't even see the neck. So I've now gone back into the object editor for the Boris body, and we turned on the green grids. It's a little button that has Maxwell's head and a bunch of dotted lines and stuff around that with a wheel and a banana. That little icon will get you what you need and just move the grid where the head is supposed to be up or wherever you need to adjust it. I am going to put on another detail though on the Boris head. We do have enough stamps for that, which is good because he does have these kind of freckle holes and stuff. So I just used freckles actually. That was a pretty easy stamp to figure out. You know, it's very close to the pattern that the head is supposed to be. And so the second set of freckles and stuff on the other side of the nose needed to be shrunk and then increased and then shrunk back down to normal size. Basically increase it to move it away. You know, Scribblenauts also, one of the limitations is that you can't move a stamp super far off from your original stamp. Like we started off with a head as the source object for the head. So from that original head, we can't move those freckles all the way without increasing the size majorly. That lets us move it further, and then we just shrink it back down to normal size. So that's why I was doing that. Here's the Sammy Lawrence creation from back in episode 226 of this series. Very recent ago, of course. It actually wasn't just the last episode because that was a Kendo crossover with Pokemon, but Sammy Lawrence, you know, some people are theorizing that that is Boris. We will hopefully find out Boris's origins or more, just kind of information about Boris in chapter 3. We're hoping, of course. I love Boris, great character. So to create Dead Boris, I'm actually going to start off with a skyscraper. Why this, you ask? Well, for one, it's a really big building, of course, big stamp that we can use, so it'll cover a lot of space, but it's also tall. I want the Dead Boris, of course, to be on the table, and we're going to try to create it with a little piece of the skyscraper kind of at the side is going to be peeking out, you know, like the hinge that's holding up the table down there, kind of near the bottom. So you can see that I've got a glow stick actually to be the side of the table rack that he's on, and the main part of it is going to be a wafer board. And so hopefully you also notice that we've put some sort of color patterns on these to make it look a little bit more like it's wood, and then of course gave it that yellow-ish kind of color of the lighting or sepia lighting from Bendy and the Ink Machine. And then we can actually use a lot of the design from our Boris. There's going to be a few changes, but the Boris that you just saw us create, basically the body, we're going to use a lot of it again. So Plumber is going to be sort of for that main part, while the Flux legs are going to be for the legs, and we're not going to have as many stamps to work with. This is going to take a lot of stamps to create Dead Boris, so as you would probably imagine. And so now I'm going to go ahead with a baboon. We're going to take the very back tail piece, so that long kind of thin tail part is going to be for the arms. You know, Boris does again have very skinny arms, and so for his hands on the rack, we actually are not going to see one of the hands there. It's just, this is sort of like looking at it from a side angle, but not all the way horizontally to the side or anything, but not straight on, of course, too. So it's sort of like a 1/4 corner turn perspective. Hopefully that makes sense. And so I used a dory, and of course that's not anything like a blue tang or the fish dory, but it is a fish. We want the fish, not the boat. And the dory fin that's down at the bottom, it kind of looks like a hand, is actually going to be there underneath the flux legs, and that'll be for the Boris hands. We got a coin, of course, just the money coin, not the Nintendo one, because you can't use that in the object editor. We got octopus tentacle pieces. There's one on the left and one on the right, and the one on the left, of course, has that little bend to it like we were using before. The one on the right is basically almost just a straight line of an octopus tentacle. And so one of the, of course, overall straps is kind of hanging down on the Dead Boris updated look. So again, this is the Chapter 1 updated look. This isn't the one where he has no clothes on and stuff like that. It's a little bit more detailed, I would say, actually, too, when they updated with Chapter 1. And so since we're not going to see his other hand right now while he's dead on the rack, that can actually save us a stamp space. It's going to be like it's too far over, so we're not going to see that. So that is a legitimate design choice. That's not something like I forgot or anything like that. I didn't forget. Ribs. You can actually just type in ribs and not get the bone, but do the food ribs. Ironically, for his bones, ribs. And so we did that twice. The ribs just painted all the way black, and there's also one additional kind of spike for the bones right there. You can paint that all the way black too. It's just going to blend in with everything that we're doing. Like a silver sword here. The silver sword is actually for the big ink splatter, which is, of course, blood, but with the Bendy and the ink machine artwork, it looks very inky and stuff like that. So it's like inky blood. A tornado. We'll go with this kind of bottom right piece, or it's this right piece to the side. You can see that for some more ink splatter blood up at the top, next to the silver sword, just a little bit above it, of course. And chicken feed I'm going to go with next. We're actually only utilizing this for really 3 main dots of that chicken feed, 3 main parts of it. Maybe it'll have a little bit more for the splattering ink blood, but paint them all black in case anything shows up. And you also, of course, don't want any other coloration from the chicken feed. And so here, I think we'll kind of leave it actually as is. You know, I don't know how much of that chicken feed will show up, but I actually do kind of like it having a whole bunch of the feed seeds all over there. So that's actually pretty good. Now, these lines and stuff for the strap, as well as some ink streaks there at the top near the silver sword, these are a jellyfish, the upper tentacle kind of body piece. It's right next to the jellyfish's main body area. You can kind of click to the left or the right and use either one. It creates these big black lines, and so that's a really good kind of thin line, but when you make it bigger and increase its size, then of course it looks like the straps for Dead Boris there. And so it's so sad he's strapped to the table. You can adjust those straps a little bit later, because the next, of course, main details we need is the head. I want the head to be pretty detailed for the most part, and so we're actually going to use a glue, because we're going to basically just glue it on. So where the head should be, we're going to have the glue work its magic, I guess. So I'm going to go with a golem kind of back thigh piece, so it's that upper leg back thigh, and that'll be for the main part of Boris's snout, his big nose right here, and we've got a dot for the part next to that, basically where his cheeks are, and his cheeks do have the little rosy cheek thing, but it's black, and so I am going to use a dot for that as well. And then also a third dot is going to be for the nose. So you saw we had triple dots there, and the glue is actually a little bit underneath that golem thigh piece. So that glue is actually, I intentionally left that kind of out, left it basically showing a little bit, because that's supposed to be like Boris's bottom jaw, you know, the bottom of his mouth right there is showing on purpose. So we got the freckles again for those little whisker freckle areas there near his nose. And so next, this is all looking pretty good. I'm just making some last kind of sizing adjustments to all of that, but we're gonna go with the kiwi once again and do the fruit yet again. So paint that pretty much all the way black, but I do kind of like that it has this little light on it, that texture down at the very bottom now that we've turned the kiwi over. There's actually a little bit of light there on the Dead Boris's head in the game, so I kind of like that is actually positioned very close and very accurate to the game. An octopus, we're using that same kind of bent tentacle piece. You could even use the straight one if you wanted to, but I like how this bent one, I think it's a little bit longer, honestly, and when you size it up and down, of course, you can move it further away from the glue source object. I'm gonna go with an oil vent, yet again, to be the kind of main white of Boris's eyes. He's got a lot of white space right here. Instead of the dots for eyes, of course, he's gonna have X's for eyes. You can probably, if you have enough stamp space, you could use like cuttlefish, tentacle arm pieces and stuff to kind of make thinner X's, because the X in this game, of course, when you use any letters, they can't shrink as small as sometimes you would like to, but I think that this is actually looking pretty good, so I'm just making sure that I am conserving my stamp space good enough. Maybe you'll see at the end of this that we have some more. We got a scorpion tail piece from it's kind of the upper middle tail piece, and it has a little bit of a curvature in it, protrusion, and so just like we did with the Boris head from episode 220, we're also going to make that that basically be at the top of that white oil vent at the top there and just kind of come in so that there is a little curve in and distinguishing both of the eyes for Boris. Looking good, so some last minute positioning, and here I'm just going to script it so it has a lot of health and stuff like that in case it, it might die easily compared to the table rack section that we made earlier. So let's piece this all together. I know you want to see what that looks like, so we'll glue the head on, and I'm just kind of getting the exact spot, so there we go. Looks good. I'm actually going to move it over just slightly. Well, that might have been the exact same spot. I'm trying. There we go. I think that that's a little bit better, kind of over where this strap is. And so that actually reminds me, again, you can adjust these straps kind of after the fact. So if you don't want them to be right there amidst his head and stuff, you can then go edit the body table object right here like I'm going to do. And I'm just going to grab that very top jellyfish strap and just move it down ever so slightly. It needs to just be kind of above the ribs but below the head a little bit, like it's going over his neck and shoulders, I would say. Probably that, around that area at least. And so there's the dead Boris, and somehow Boris is alive, of course, with chapter 2. And I just took off his head, but he's still alive. Okay, there we go. And so this is kind of a neat look at our alive Boris from chapter 2, and then our updated chapter 1 dead Boris there to my right. And so now we'll go ahead and include Bendy. There is Bendy from my episode 218. So yes, of course I have created Bendy. We all need that. But I thank you so much. You guys have been so amazing, giving me so much support. So many new subscribers from the Bendy and the Ink Machine fandom. I love everybody. If you don't know, I upload every single Sunday. This is an extra episode for the week, so you are going to actually see another episode coming up very soon, Sunday. So occasionally I do have 2 episodes per week or more. Those are the lucky weeks. I have a really crazy life, everybody. Really busy. But then I also live stream on twitch.tv/DRKENDO every single Monday night, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And don't forget about the Amino community for Bendy and the Ink Machine. Go ahead and download that now. Again, the links to that are in the description. You can follow me over there. I won't have time to make posts every day or anything, but I am going to try to keep up with it among the 10 million other things that I try to keep up with. Okay, I'll go ahead and sign off. I will catch you guys on the next vid, and thanks for viewing.
Down the road of twists and turns, always anxious to see what's within. We can look ahead to the point of no return, to the rest of our lives as the spectacle begins. I've been down the road of twists